Hello, everyone. I hope you're having a good evening. Welcome to this Montana Book Festival event, Missoula's Barfly Literati. My name is Lauren Korn. I'm the director of the Montana Book Festival. Again, thank you for joining us tonight, and thank you to our Collector's Edition sponsor, Whitefish Review, for supporting us, and in doing so, supporting contemporary literature in the West. A shout out as well to MissoulaEvents.net and Montana Press Monthly. Our festival would not be possible without the support of these and other sponsors. We're really excited to welcome authors Philip Schaefer, Rachel Mindell, Suzanne Garcia Pino, and Brett Puryear, as well as moderator Jenny Montgomery to this event tonight. I'm going to introduce Jenny now. Jenny Montgomery is an astrologer, poet, and cartoonist who is at work on a graphic memoir. She earned her PhD at Columbia University, focusing on the history of the wretched subject, such as astrology, divination, and magic in the Greco-Arab world. She and her family run Montgomery Distillery in Missoula, Montana. Take it away, Jenny.
Hey, thank you, Lauren. Yeah, I am just so delighted. I thought for about a millisecond about what kind of panel might be fun to put together for the book festival this year. And instantly I knew that some of my dearest friends and favorite writers all had something in common, which was their toiling and serving the public in service establishments, often bars, restaurants, cocktail bars, and that all of you guys have written some amazing stuff that either concerns things you may have seen, what you've experienced, what it's like to do that work, what you experience of the collective when you're face to face with people and their needs, desires, in their off hours. So I know this is going to be a really rich reading, and I'm looking forward to hearing from all of you. Very excited to hear some new work as well. And I'm going to start off with Rachel Mendel, one of my BFFs. Rachel is a favorite here in Missoula. She's currently living in Tucson. She's a writer, editor, and teacher. And her third chapbook, Maybe, was just released by Tammy. It's really beautiful, and they have this at Fact and Fiction. I was blown away by it. Her poems have appeared or are forthcoming in Black Warrior Review, Denver Quarterly, Diagram, Fog Lifters, Sycamore Review, and other hotshot journals. And she works for Submittable and the University of Arizona Poetry Center. Thanks for being here, Rachel.
Thank you, Jenny. This is so fun. I'm so excited to be here. Jenny had asked us to talk a little bit about our background in the service industry. So I will start there. I had my first waitressing job at 16 in a retirement home. I worked my way up from busser. At 22, I lied my way into a bartending job. And as one does, well, I didn't lie, I exaggerated. I had opened beers and poured like pre-made margaritas into cups before. So I was kind of a bartender before. But anyway, I got that job, and that allowed me to then get other jobs. And all told, I've done it over 15 years of waiting tables and bartending. And I love it, and I hate it, and I miss it all the time when I'm not doing it. And so it was fun to find some poems that are related to that. So the first poem I'm going to read is about folding napkins, as one does. All right. Because we are animals, napkins. As leaves to tables, knees to knees, a napkin pressed in wide French pleat. No goblet fan or fleur-de-lis, behind this rose do take your seat. Black and blue, his piece on plate, with drop of wine, sea salt to taste, I fold in half, curl one side back. I mass my pile, you sip and saw, the number tries to learn anew some ordered path of lines and cloth. She dabs her lip, and to the heap another linen, help is cheap. This poem is called Week 12, and I wanted to read it because it mentions bartending, but it also mentions Vicky Now, who taught a workshop in Tucson, and she's a poet who's at the festival now and is totally amazing, so you should check out her work. This is, well, it's about pregnancy kind of too. It starts with an epigraph from the What to Expect website. Week 12. By now, your baby weighs a full ½ ounce with a crown to rump length of 2 to 2¼ inches, about the size of a lime. My baby lime, before your time, I lived much life at night. Today, together, we are the height of a halogen lamp and the width of certain trees. What used to curl in and then out stays out, but not out late, thank Christ. Today, I have every eyelash I'll ever have, and you are growing reflexes. You have taught me about the gag, and I have taught you to live inside a sack. It's all right that I wake most mornings late from dreams of drinking or a bong, having lived much of my life at night, having lived with cat power in the bars. When I saw her play, she stopped playing and left the stage, mostly helpless and a little tart. Of limes, I've cut countless, filled bin after bin in bars with slits, so each would slide on a glass, mine at another bar later. This week, your fingers and toes will form. I sip Sprite after Sprite. In Vicky Now's fruit workshop, one woman wrote her whole piece, then returned to draw circles around text sections like limes, whereas I had drawn all of my bananas in a bunch first thing. Her lesson, the outline is less important when you know where you're growing, where you're going. I know I'm growing. So I'm going to read a couple poems from chapbook 3, and then I have one more after that. So this chapbook is a lot about fertility. And so I'm going to read a poem about coral insemination, which, if you did not know, is very fascinating. Scientists are trying to replenish coral reefs using artificial insemination. And so they wait until the night of the coral spawning, which happens once a year on a full moon, and then they collect all the materials. It's pretty cool. And it's really beautiful. If you haven't seen it, you can find it on YouTube, coral spawning. Okay. Once a year on full moon, find them glowing their way like bubbles, rising a champagne flute for the roof. Do these marine invertebrates impel their spawning upwards? After soft polyps have swelled and released and propelled towards the ocean surface, hundreds hermaphroditic bundles that shine in the night, filled with egg and seed as they ascend or cling inside their together shape or float for capture by scientists. I am a scientist, waiting in labs under red lights to collect them. Guarding containers filled with harvested coral and salt water, and the packages begin to break apart, falling like a silk robe to the ankles of each white bucket, releasing ova and sperm as lab specialists suck the cells quickly up, and with their gloves that are so much rigor and savior and capture and keeper, so as to bank for cryo-freezing, such for shipping, stacked for storage, so that one day reefs like the Great Dead Barrier, mother gone gray and fetid, might live yet again. Another night, another benevolent cork, future popping its blue and purple, orange and branching, swaying, skeletal magnum across the sea. I lied, I'm just gonna do 2 more poems, one more from the chapbook. This poem, Walrus, is after Mary Ruffle. In the 3rd grade, I traced a walrus from a book and painted it gray, and then I took it home. We went to the Double L by the racetrack for my father, and my mother brought the picture to the restaurant and set it on the table. A sealed table perhaps, or painted orange with tall attached seats to form a booth. I did not wish to celebrate the art because I had cheated to make it. The bulges and bunches better than anything I would ever do for a very long time. So I've had to make a path through the dark of my danger, attracted to forgeries and schemes in a world with changing phone numbers where people get caught. So I have curled beneath the covers of my belly. I am sketching something from memory and giving it flesh. I lied as a woman. I lied as a child. I love the smell of paint. And this last poem just came out in Gertrude, which is a really fabulous queer journal. If you don't know it, check it out. It's about being drunk, and it's called Heights. You could come loose or get tight, feel loaded or float on by. You might show juiced and leave faded. The room purple to your dress is brown. If you were lifted, you were lucky on the shoulders of the night. If you've gotten down, you're getting hotter, higher. So when the music stops, find a chair for your head. a shade for your staircase and straw. It sips, and so it slips. Escapes are for fires, ladders for treed cats. If you roll with it, beware the glass, you'll stick. Your top all tipsy and your legs of liquid brick. Courage is a crapshoot. Not that you won't find it, but where you might choose to let fall. First floor windows are still quite tall. Thanks. And now I have the very distinct pleasure of introducing my friend, Philip Schaefer. Phil Schaefer's first collection of poems, Bad Summit, winner of the Agda Shahid Ali Poetry Prize, was released by the University of Utah Press. He is the author of 3 chapbooks, 2 of which were co-written with friend and poet Jeff Whitney. He won the 2016 Meridian Editors Prize in Poetry, and his work out or due out in Kenyon Review, Prairie Schooner, Thrush Poetry Journal, Guernica, the Cincinnati Review, Salt Hill, Bat City Review, the Adroit Journal, Baltimore Review, Diode, Barrow Street, and Passages North, among others. He is the co-owner of the Camino restaurant in Missoula, where he directs the bar program, and he is a dear friend and so wonderful. Show him, Phil.
Thank you, Rachel. Fantastic reading. You are bar none the most energetic, efficient, wonderful reader. And
did you mean to say bar none?
Oh, yeah, that was fantastic. I'm just going to read a few poems. I'll just say that I've been working in the industry for 12, 13 years, something like that now. And I worked for Jenny and Montgomery's Distillery for 6 years or so, and I'm now running or co-running a restaurant in downtown Missoula, and it's been the most wonderfully terrifying experience of my life, absolutely, but it's going well in spite of the world, and hopefully it'll continue that way. I'm going to read, I think, just 5 poems. I'm going to start with 2 newer-ish ones. The first one, I don't think has anything to do with bar culture, but it's the most recent poem I've written, and I always like to do that when I read, is just to put it out there without anyone having eyes on it. So, sorry. It's called My Apocrypha. Mostly, I kill the houseplants, drink vinegar for tea. I try to vacuum the ceiling while sleeping birds fill my lungs with hurricane blue feathers. This is what growing more and more meaningless looks like through a kaleidoscope. As you drive I-70 down the baby guilt billboards of my history, I ice cream cone lick the mountains outside our bedroom window, pretend I'm a rocking chair. Stale AC wraps around my ribs like the feeling you get after slipping off an old wool quilt. Mostly, I'm as naked as a musket in a glass case. You're here, but you're there. You ghost in my mouth. When I say I watered the record player, I mean our dog went on permanent vacation in the side yard. I've been sleeping on her rock all week. This next poem, I'm really just reading it because it's, I think, the best poem I've written in the last few years, and that's all. If you hate it, then that's just going to confirm a few things about my life. It's called Chicken Fever. Winter is killing everyone I know. On the radio today, the DJ mumbled, "Mercy is for pussies," and like God, I started to doubt my existence. In the crawl space of the attic, I hide cubed cheese, and by the floorboards lay traps. It's a miracle to believe you're alive at all. Field mice run wild through my mind late at night, and their tails bleed a red so pink you could swallow your tongue just to become a different person. Doesn't that sound nice? Drowning inside yourself, flailing like a kite mid-storm. Let's play truth or dare, but you go first and forever return to that perversion of yourself you put behind bars years ago. Of course, I'm in my mother's underwear again, eating candy. I'm on top of the roof with a megaphone and a hatchet, canceling out the weather. There is nothing more cruel and satisfying than, where is it? Than having wings you cannot use. Twice already, I've tried to sleep fully clothed while sober. Call it head lice for the soul. Call it by name. The only game worth playing involves dice and cancer. Here, in the sweet, thick middle of misery, children build tree forts. Fathers watch TV. Angels fall and call it flying. I'm gonna read 2 poems from the book that Rachel just mentioned. The first one I wrote back in 2013 when Rachel and I were in the MFA together or something like that, hanging out, smoking spliffs in the rattlesnake. It's sort of a rattlesnake Missoula poem. It's called Smoke Tones. It's in 4 parts. I don't think I've ever read this out loud. 1. Something about this town is old rubber. If it isn't dangling from the bed of a red truck, a deer is gnawing flowers from my palm. Everyone here drinks alone together. The stars are bulbs of Jurassic insects, paused lightning. They curse down our open shirts. I wet my fingers and try to pinch one like a wick, forgetting how distance closes in on us from past and future centuries. This night is a brown miniature train. We widen our mouths into tunnels. 2. Some nights are thick as milk. What we abandon retracts with small clouds on its back. We fight the urge to torment bottles into the ground, but we are weak. Danger speaks from within, distills the shapes our bodies make, the way some roses swallow gold until everything is whole and a bee sings out. 3. Everyone here pretends to be grass, wind-lipped, though we are only kidding ourselves. The girls want us to drink another one for them even after they've gone to bed in some strange guy's average arms. So we do 2, 12, trouble we've sunk into before and before that and after always. 4. There are more fields than we have fingers to run them through. We pour beer into the creek and press our ears to the earth where the rocks shift. Move water south toward our lips. We are conch shells, stethoscopes, children in the grove saying no more, never, ever more. We will not go home. It's called After You Left. I've been dipping my finger in this happy hour martini for half a week now. My mouth is a ballroom, my tongue a wedding dress floating up from the basement of a pond. Like romance, I don't shut up. I eat olive after olive. After all this, there's nothing but the king and number 133 on this neon lit machine. Wise men don't say what wise men don't say. But mostly it's true. I miss your clouds, your bubblegum yawn. Barkeep keeps calling me Joe and I can't help but look over my shoulder. Outside, the moon drools out astronauts, what we used to call stars falling, what we used to call anything floating with root beer. On the train today, a man sang into his necktie, tapped it twice for reverb. He wore a human face the shape of Indiana. When you're old, imagine us in violet, I grease back my genius hair and step on stage. I dip the mic and make a spark through its metal, buzzing lips. Listen, my voice is drumming. Cup your ear. Thank you all for listening. I've got just one more poem. I've never read this poem before, and it's a letter to the head distiller of Montgomery Distillery, and he has no idea that this poem exists. It was a runner-up for a contest with Crazy Horse Literary Magazine, I think like 2 years ago. And so I'm now having the confidence to read it. It's called Dear Chad. I'm trying to not be afraid of what you might think anymore. Sweat bees produce thick honey underground the way we bury our coldest secrets until hard lick rain follows them out. Here's one for you. Not every trashed truck is an easy internet buck, a way to fuck the unlucky dollar off a farmed mallard's leg. The pond goes on forever and the swimming never ends. A girl bends into a midnight lake moon only to wear silver liquid as her final neon jacket. What I mean to say is I'm this close to wishing we were never friends. That the whiskey calm you shoulder and the harmonica you lip flay are both on fire. Wild as tropical green persimmons drowning in Los Angeles. But I don't, and I can't. My mind hurtles into marathon ampersands. And so you fix rusted clutches and dime-weld worn thin timing belts. Your decade-young girlfriend quotes Camus with a blue toothpick, prehistoric, unapologetic. Remember the night we danced like 90s Ukraine on Susan's ghost-sloped floorboards? You wailed the stones with ash mint in your throat, gave me a thorned rose garden embrace. Chad, I want you to know I love you dark and almost holy. When I remember your gonging voice, it echoes the way birds in danger reverberate off the clouds like careful gunshots. The way peace begets peace until the siren slides right through. Thank you. And now I'm going to introduce Brett. Get in here, sucker.
Oh,
All right.
All right.
This is Brett.
how's it going?
Brett Puryear grew up in Fartnuga, Tennessee, and earned his MFA in fiction at the University of Montana.
The University of Farts.
His fiction and magazine writing has appeared or is forthcoming in the Iowa Review, Cut Bank, Field and Stream, Men's Journal, nice,
Mm-hmm.
And others, also nice. He's a senior prose editor at Storyscape Journal, the tasting room manager at Montgomery Distillery, and occasionally tours as a musician. He's a phenomenal writer, one of my best friends, and the biggest goon of all time.
Yeah. Thanks. Are you just gonna sit here and look at me? That's fine. No, that's okay.
No, I'm gonna get out.
Okay. Okay. Thanks for having me. Jenny, really appreciate you putting this together. It's pretty awesome. Rachel, that was amazing. Phil, that was okay. Yeah. So I'll start out by briefly giving a brief background of my service industry experience. I think I started bussing tables when I was 17. So that would mean that I have been in the industry for 15 years, which is almost half of my life. And now I'm working for and with Jenny at the distillery, managing the tasting room. Love it. Bartended in Florida, Washington, D.C., Tennessee, Montana. Love it. Love it. It gives me like another creative outlet. Yeah, that's about it. So I'm going to read a piece that doesn't really have anything to do with the industry or bartending or drinks at all. It takes place on a lake that's like a lot of liquid. So that's about as drinky as it gets. But it's the most recently published thing that I have, and it's just short enough to not be too long. So I'm gonna read, let's see. A story called Old Soul Dog that was published in the most recent or second most recent issue of Cutbank. All right. Old Soul Dog. New dog soared slung-bellied over the split rail fence and beat hell out of the wind, and dove off the dock with a dead rabbit in his or her, no, quick, study the undercarriage, his mouth. This occurring while we gassed up that old trashed jet ski borrowed from Mr. Hurley. Iridescent gasoline on the water spread into a birthmark shape and forked around the hole. New dog swam into the color-changing splatter like some special heavenly dog and ejected the dead rabbit out its mouth. Good dog. Fetch that bunny out the water, Carp told me. My friend Carp got the nickname from his mom because he was the gruesomest baby she'd ever seen, come out of her own inner chamber, but never did get better looking. A red birthmark splashed Carp's back sized like all of Eurasia. But his mom couldn't admit the mark had been fired upon his flesh via blood of her own. Nothing ugly came from my blood, she'd cry. That's his shit-ass daddy. Because she'd been a pageant girl in McMinn County and once even dated the great handsome quarterback Rory Brock in high school. She hurled out this historical detail at every social event at some point so as to let everybody and their sisters and babies know she'd once been a debutante. What happened? Okay, I fetched up this dead rabbit from the water. We finished gassing the jet ski and idled over to the dock, and Carp heaved up and got a hold of a bright blue stringer and his pocket knife, the one with his dad's initials etched into the steel in the old English style. Carp hook-mouthed the rabbit and plunged the knife point into its jowl, carving fish gills. Black blood pooled thick paint-like over its scratchy brown coat. He stuck the bright blue stringer through the rabbit's mouth and yanked it through a bloodied gill and clinched it to the U-bolt off the back of the jet ski. We went for a ride out on the slough, towing the rabbit like a little bitty bunny tuber. Old dogs beheld us at Bank's Edge, yipping and snapping their jaws, forever young, yet their fresh accomplice, New Dog the rabbit hunter, was not a convert to their happy, bemused little reckonings. I think I like flesh accomplished better. You see, I know a lot of words, but I'm still stupid. My folks thought me either the brains of the family or a complete numbnuts, or at least sometimes that's what my dad called me. I'd become the celebrity of the school spelling bee. They didn't know where it came from, but I didn't put any value on that and thought maybe they ought to concern themselves with matters of higher significance, and just I'd turn out however I'd turn out. Right now, I just wanted to haul out a large-scale rodent death card in miniature across the green summer sparkle of Tennessee water. New Dog was not a convert because he was sad for how we treated the rabbit post-mortem. By God, he'd killed it, yet he respected it. You could tell by the way he just lay there looking sullen and droop-lipped. He was not as lowbrow as these old dancing dogs who had never learned, in all their expansive, compacted dog years, how to self-reflect and dog-like catch the scent of and hunt down and tear apart cruelty and meanness. An old soul dog much further advanced than they. Miss Traylor and her little daughters, who lived on the corner of the slough, stood by the bank looking very upset. Miss Traylor was a ghoul, like most people, sun up to sundown, just dead drunk off invented petty concerns. We got back from our procession on the beat-looking jet ski, and Miss Traylor was yelling at Dad with her arms flying around. Instead of untying the stringer, Carp just drew his knife out and cut it loose. The rabbit floated away with this bright blue string coming out its mouth, drifting away like he'd wanted to tell us something in sheer bright blue, but it never turned into the bright blue bubble where you'd read his words like you did in the Sunday funnies. Truth be told, we had made the little Traylor girls cry. Dad called Carp's mom over and told her to take care of Carp, and then Dad took me up to the porch where he kept a thick sheath of palm leaves in the corner for decoration, like a beach house thing. He yanked my trunks down and lifted the palm leaves and rocketed my rear end with a red wrath that never stopped and never stopped. Numbnuts, numbnuts, numbnuts. Sorry, can't say numbnuts that many times and not laugh. Afterwards, he and my mother sat at the kitchen table pouring spiked iced tea from a pitcher. I was so angry with New Dog. Everything was his fault. I had to find him and let him know he ruined my day, bringing this dead large-scale rodent into my life. That's right, I didn't see it as a pretty little bunny, but like some glorified donkey-eared rat come out of a sewer somewhere to hurl a wrench into my existence. I came upon the New Dog like hot hell with my little water sock. You little stinking ass face fuck dick. I'll kill you. I got him in the face with it. He was nothing but a mutt, ugly as Carp, though lean-boned and crisp under the summer sun's heaven. Again, I water socked him in the face. But New Dog leapt and double paw shoved me and I collapsed all over the hot grass. He bit my titty. I changed my opinion of him. I preferred old dogs with their slack-jawed lack of world care and principles. We had, Carp and me, given the old dogs names. There was Scab Ass and Ribbit, because he had a frog face, and Mr. Crow, a tar black dog who had earned our respect because he'd lick your hands and face with a breath that didn't make you feel dipped in vomit. Then there was the Sorry. I hated this story when I first wrote it. Now I think it's kind of funny. Then there was a mega old dog, Gurgle, who made awful sounds with his throat while he snuffled at the grass. Old dogs joined that night for the cookout with Carp and his mom and me and Dad and Mom and Mr. Hurley and his grandson Christopher, a big old boy with sawdust-colored hair and eyes set far apart like rivets, who earlier that day had hooked into this giant turtle with his rig, a chicken liver tied to a yellow milk jug. Mom fried crappie and big chunks of turtle meat. She made hush puppies and what she called twice fried French fries. She made cocktail sauce so heavy with horseradish it was bright orange as her daylilies. Can Carp stay over? I kept saying. Dad said, no, you can't because you've been acting like a little shit-ass numbnuts. But Mom told him we didn't know any better, and then they got into some kind of serious talking match, but Mom won because he's a fool with words and she's where I got mine. Carp's mom had had too many and talked about all the experiences of her youth and how advanced she had become at such an early stage and how you couldn't take that from anybody. I dipped a great wad of turtle meat into the pale orange cocktail sauce with the smell so strong it opened up your whole face like some big wind got in there making you clean again. My rear end still stung a little from the stack of palm leaves, but Carp and me had the bedroom window flown open. Outside was icy black. New Dog skittered darkly somewhere in the tall trees. I listened for the crackling feet of creatures. I peered out into the fanged night. Carp, my friend, fell into some serious snoring, like his dreams were boiling inside his head. I could hear the heat of my father laying with my mother in the other room. I heard a snuffling. I shoved my face out the window. New Dog, below, he spun and he danced like he'd come to give me some kind of reckoning to keep. to fling inside me like a sword. He skittered away on the black ground, to harry the trees, to fly the split rail fence. I cried out to him, "Come here, boy, come, friend." New dog, he just kept on dancing and dancing and dancing with the blue spirits of rabbits. I watched. It doesn't really matter if it's real or not. That's the secret. I opened my mouth so as to cry forth every ounce of air in my body toward New Dog and the dancing ghost rabbit. Suddenly, the breath inside me came and cut out my tongue. Thank you. And I'm gonna introduce Suzanne right now, who I had not met before, but I'm really looking forward to listening to her work. Suzanne Garcia Pino is a candidate in the University of Montana's creative writing program, studying both fiction and nonfiction. She is a recipient of the Husted Jones Scholarship and a reader for Cutbank Literary Magazine. She lives in Missoula with her husband and 2 kids. All right, take it away.
Hi, everyone. First, thanks to Montana Book Festival. This is so fun. I like the Zoom version personally. I love Zoom. And thanks to Jenny for arranging this Barfly crew. You're awesome. So, and then I think I have to give my qualifications of why I get to be on this panel, which is I had my first serving job when I was 14. I worked at a place called Pizza Time in South Florida, and I'm pretty sure like it was a restaurant like mob front. And they hired me like under the table, and they also fired me. It was the first job that I was fired from. But like that's all I did for the next 10 years or so. Is I was always in the service industry. I never waited tables, or sorry, I never bartended. Like that was the ultimate, and I just like couldn't achieve the bartending gig. I was always like a lowly server. But yeah, I worked at Red Lobster when I was 18 in Nashville, Tennessee, and I like pissed off people like George Jones, and I don't know, I did a lot of that stuff. So anyways, my piece that I'm reading is called In the Museum, and it's a abridged nonfiction essay that I wrote about, it is about alcohol because I love alcohol too much. And so now I can't drink it anymore. And so this piece is about sobriety. So in the museum, in New Mexico's northern volcanic badlands, mesas rise enormous and flat from the desert's endless stretches of caliche and scarcity. In my dreams, I am still picking through that red, caking dirt after the late summer monsoons, while the water-swollen, kidney-red earth warms and contracts like air-filled lungs. This expansion and contraction dredges up remnants from the underworld in the form of millions of ancient teeth, fossils that had fallen out of the mouths of hundreds of thousands of sharks that once swam here when this desert was a sea. I've seen these remnants myself. I've hunted them, pushing my fingers around rust-colored sand and pebbles. I've tested the sharpness of the fine denticulate ridges against my flesh, and something about these still sharp blades opened up a little space inside of me. This was the moment I must point to when, a year and a half later, I was struck with the urge to go to the museum. In the initial days of my sobriety, I sensed a future ripe with failure. I now understand this is normal for someone with a long history of not following through on their commitments. I kept wondering if I was going to wake up and change my mind, if I would learn to sip my drinks slowly, reverentially. I would be the queen of self-control. I began attending an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting in an Albuquerque neighborhood dubbed the War Zone, which the city was attempting to rebrand as the International Zone. This is where you went to get the good agua fresca. where the pho was unrivaled, but also a convenient meal you might eat while the restaurant owner ran an emissions test on your Subaru out front. There were pawn shops, piñata shops where little orange crepe paper trumps dangled from the portico. Spotty strip malls were businesses with handmade signage displayed cheaply built secondhand wares in the parking lot. Many of the meeting goers belonged to Albuquerque's large transient community, whose attendance was required as part of their treatment at the state-run halfway house next door. They shuffled about in their pajamas and slippers, sipping coffee and smoking. I wore middle-class mom leisure wear. We were all barely hanging on, and yet we treated each other so nicely. When I was at meetings, I felt like I had no skin and that I would always be so raw and exposed. But in meetings, I was calm. Those meetings connected me to an underworld I sensed I belonged to, in some parallel universe where I walked along dirty streets. I needed to show up for this other me, not save her, not save anyone. I needed to know love could thrive anywhere. I was a year and a half sober the first time I willingly entered Albuquerque's Natural History Museum. You want to go to the Natural History Museum? My incredulous children asked. They were used to being taken to the museum by their father. I always declined their invitations. Why would I purposefully spend my time inside an institution of dull beiges? But something inside me had changed. I never expected deep time to become so exhilarating. In the museum, I entered a large room segmented into 3 sections, where each wall was lined with floor-to-ceiling murals of strange creatures standing in expansive golden fields, the grasslands. A round, muscular, mouth-trunked elephant beast steps through thick grass. A grazing deer crowned in a triple horn of antlers with sharp triangular tips pointing heavenward. Lush giant palms, deep green ferns, tall grasses, coniferous trees. In the next room, I stood in a stupor, taking in the details of our last great extinction. 66 million years ago, when the Chicxulub meteor struck the Yucatan with such force that the ground rippled in an earthen shockwave, rising higher than Everest. Back then, we mammals were secretive little things, our bodies hairy, our burrs alive. We skulked beneath the ground cover, hiding like addicts from yellow-eyed, fierce reptiles, waiting for some unlikely miracle, a beneficent disruption that might grant us a different kind of life. Our opportunity came from the heavens in the form of a hot, fiery annihilation. 75% of life did not survive, but we prevailed. Eventually, we thrived. At my AA meetings, I would say I'm an alcoholic, but I didn't have a reference or a history for this information at first. I relied on AA's third tradition. The only requirement for AA membership is a desire to stop drinking. In time, more will be revealed, they told me. A memory surfaced, my first sip of alcohol. Sitting outside on a cool evening with my dad, my skin golden from the California sunshine, and he offers me a sip of his beer. The alcohol hits my tongue, and I instantly like it. That fuzzy haze, that tiny anarchic fugue hovering at the roof of my mouth, I like that too. It vibrated with an energy that matched something inside of me, the solution to an unworkable problem. This is how to be in the world. I was 5. My future thoughts were never of a career or marriage or college, although those did come. They were of the bars I would go to. When I was a teenager, I would sit in my mom's Nissan Stanza and daydream about sitting on bar stools and drinking whatever I wanted, as much as I wanted. I thought everyone felt this way, that we were all just pretending to care about capitalism when what we really desired was uncut oblivion and songs in minor keys. Later, when I was 14 and newly a freshman in high school, my older sister, my only sibling, died in a car accident. This became the central narrative of my life, from which many other narratives emerged. When I look back, I now consider my behavior, how I found the situation unfathomable, how I never cried or mourned my sister in any proper way, how I used the situation opportunistically, coming and going as I pleased, sometimes through my front door, sometimes out my bedroom window. I couldn't be around my parents in their choking sorrow. I barely attended my classes. Instead, I hunkered down in the school's parking lot, lurking between cars, inhaling PCP-laced joints and whatever else anyone handed to me. Beer, Goldschlager, Tanqueray, Jim Beam, Cisco, Boone's Farm, Absolute 40s of Old English, boxed wine. I drank it all. I drank it in strange apartments, with strange people, with friends, in cars, in my best friend's pink bedroom, on golf courses in wealthy neighborhoods, by the beach, inside a beat up van with no seats. My thirst was bottomless. I'm still thirsty. Alcohol was my first love, the outer ring orbiting what I really desired, not death exactly, but whatever lay right next to it, just within some morbid reach. At the end of my high school freshman year, right before I moved, I went to a house party of a classmate whose parents were out of town. Throughout the night, I kept my eyes on a college-age white boy with long hair and a face uncomplicated by anything other than its own beauty. He sat on the couch talking to no one as the rest of us drank around him, exhaling our skunky plumes of smoke. Someone whispered to me this was his house and that he had returned early from his first year in college because one night on a dare, he had consumed 50 hits of acid. He never moved the whole night, remaining inchoate and simple-minded, as though his mind, reeling from its inflicted damage, could not trace even the most basic conversation. I only stared more. To me, he looked serene, and I found myself envying him, envying his incapacity. I wanted what he had, enough beauty to free me from wanting beauty, enough oblivion to be mindless. I thought this was freedom. 100 million years ago, North America splits from Europe and heads west. Seas form and disappear. Mountains rise and turn to dust. Flowers and insects find one another and form codependent bonds. Both multiply. Volcanoes erupt throughout the Triassic when dinosaurs and mammals first appear. Their violent output changes the chemistry of the entire ocean. Lungfish suck air from the muddy bogs. Phytosaurs, those useless meat eaters, die out. Further back, before Pangea broke apart, before dinosaurs and mammals, the ocean teemed with an abundance of fish whose mucus-coated forms changed too gradually for time's liking. And before the fish, life began in a warm, shallow sea edge, where a community of cells toiled in the sun to alchemize light into food. Success, they respirate. One cell subsumed another, more, bigger, they colonize, they colonize, they colonize. The labor of living became a divided task. And before life, almost 4 billion years ago, the crust cooled and hardened over a red-hot earth of roiling molten liquid, an outer shell so thin and frail, it barely covered the raging violence. This was the first illusion of safety, a suggestion. The earth is impenetrable. You are impenetrable. We moved out of South Florida my sophomore year in high school. My dad got a job transfer to Tennessee. It wasn't until much later when I was an adult, a mother, a homeowner, married, attending the 20-year memorial for my sister's accident, that I understood this move, this beneficent disruption had saved my life. When my sister's best friend showed up at the memorial, I could barely look at her. She stumbled along, her face gray pallid and pockmarked with red open sores, a death mask. Once upon a time, I was the wild one, but then I left and she stayed. I couldn't look at her because I knew in some sliding to her universe, I was seeing myself. I didn't decide to sober up in that moment, but I can't discount the notion that a seed was planted that day. Come 450, the Natural History Museum began announcing it would be closing soon and directing those of us who had not left yet to start making our way to the exit. I had spent the entire day reading each sign, making sense of each diagram, fitting everything into some previously non-existent timeline in my mind. My focus shocked me. Where had this new appreciation for deep time come from? Before sobriety, I would have only pantomimed this level of interest because I had no ability to understand how the past worked, no space to place it in my mind, no way to connect these cyclical punctuations of violence followed by long passages of quiet. There had only been room for the self's urgent needs. But that day in the museum, I saw how sobriety offered me a different way to be in the world, where I was not the sun, the center, the beginning, nor the ending. I was just another body lumbering across this unfathomable and strange hardened crust, being told it was time to change.
Wow, thank you all. That was an incredibly rich, sensory, surprising, explosive, ancient gathering of words. And I'd love to know whether anybody has questions who's watching tonight. Let's see. First of all, here's a question. Could any of you compare your writing styles or processes with a cocktail? Shaken, stirred, muddled, perhaps?
Rocks. I'm on rocks.
Okay, you're on rocks.
Yep. That's all I got.
Phil?
Shot of whiskey straight to the dome piece.
Whatever cocktail takes the longest to make.
What cocktail does take the longest to make?
Ramos Gin Fizz.
Yeah.
Right, that's what I thought. A lot of egg whites, right?
Yeah.
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 Yeah, I feel like, or just like the fermenting process in general.
Right. Which cocktail doesn't only turns out right like 1 out of every 200 times? Like writing a story or a poem.
Yeah, I mean, the cocktails have like a certain, they have to have enough dimensions to even be called cocktails, right? Like you got to have some acid. Maybe you want to have some sweet. Maybe you want some bitter.
Yeah.
Right? And if it's too simple, it's not a cocktail. It has to have 3 or 4 rooms in your mouth.
Yeah.
So are really strong boozy drinks, in your mind, do they fall in the glass of the glass of cocktails, like the Adios Motherfucker and the Long Island iced tea that's basically all booze? It doesn't have that balance you're describing, Jenny. Like, are those?
No, that's like a Jerry Bruckheimer movie, that's not that's not a real no, I'm thinking of, because I see your writings tonight have moments of exquisite pain, often coupled with some humor or effervescence that I don't know, makes it sort of all the sweeter. We can't live on just one flavor. Okay, I think we're done with that metaphor. Natalie Elliott says,
It's good.
"Thank you so much for the stunning set of readings. You're all amazing." The illustrious Melissa Quasney says, "We love this reading. Thank you. Loved seeing you. Loved seeing you, Rachel. You are a cosmopolitan." From Briar and Melissa.
Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Yeah. So how about for those aspiring writers out there who are looking for a livelihood and a way of supporting themselves, what is there to recommend the industry or life behind the bar or running drinks from the bar? What's good about it for writers?
The scheduling part, right? Like having your day to write and then working at night is pretty nice. I thought.
Yeah. It's the classic to when what you just said, and then obviously you do talk to a lot of people, and like sometimes you get names for something as simple as a name for a character from just talking to one of your loonier bar guests or customers. there's all sorts of stuff you can pick up from that sort of thing.
Yeah. And I also feel like people who are attracted to the service industry are always interesting people to be around. And it's so fast paced that I feel like if you're a writer, you kind of need that stimulation all the time anyway. And I don't know, I feel like you work hard and the money it's not shabby, you know?
Mhm.
Yeah, and it's just like people who tend to not want to work in offices are the type of people who are creative, I think. For the most part, I mean, that's a generalization, but.
And you get your exercise without having to be on a treadmill, which is really nice.
Yeah.
I think there's a certain anonymity to it as well. I worked for 10 years as a waitress and running drinks, and it's not the same as being part of a corporate culture where you're expected to really show up with a lot of bought in, corporate identity. And, not to say that that's not a good way to make a living, but I enjoyed that sort of being behind a veil, being nobody and just being an observer. And the cash, you get to go home with like hundreds of dollars. I just used to have
Hard
a
cash,
drawer
non-tax.
full of money. Yeah, it gave me a sense of security. Good comment here from Melissa Kwasny. She says, so I know Breyer used to own a bar on Capitol Hill. And Melissa says, people behind the bar like to create atmospheres they don't have to be a part of. Hence, they are creators too, as well as observers. And that's true, the music, the decor, the lighting. Wonderful. Okay, I think we're gonna wrap it up. I want to again give a shout out to those we have Maybe and Rachel. Where can people find this if they can't go to Fact and Fiction?
TammyJournal.com.
TammyJournal.com. We've got Bad Summon, also Fact and Fiction, and look in the chat if you want to find out where to get this. And we just want to thank everybody. The Montana Book Festival wouldn't be possible without all of its supporters. And so don't forget to make a donation. There's so much available for free this year. And yet it does cost money to run the festival. And they would love to have something, to set aside for next year. So do donate if you can. And we'll see if there's any last questions or anything you all want to share. I'm just so grateful. I'm gonna really be savoring this reading for a long time to come. I just loved every minute.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Jenny.
Thanks
Yeah.
all y'all.
Thanks, Jenny.
You guys are awesome.
Lauren, thanks, Montana Book Festival.
Yeah, I'll just jump in here. Thank you, Rachel and Phil and Brett and Suzanne and Jenny for organizing. And thank you, all of you people who are watching right now, for attending this virtual event. I also want to shout out Whitefish Review, MissoulaEvents.net, and Montana Press Monthly one more time. Thank you for your sponsorship. As a reminder, just as Jenny said, you can purchase books by the 2020 festival authors at factandfictionbooks.com. You can buy festival merchandise at www.montanabookfestival.com. And while you're there, as Jenny said, please donate so we can continue programming like this into the future, especially virtual programming into this fall with our MBF Plus events. So thank you all for joining us. I hope someday we can all share a cocktail or a virgin cocktail soon. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Bye, everyone.